Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We're gonna start from the breaking news possible that Ukraine is getting ready to produce a nuclear weaponry. First Ukrainian nuke ready in weeks, Bild says, Kyiv denies. Well, sometimes Bild shares kind of the strange information, but they rely on Ukrainian officials, however they failed to name those. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine obtained the third world's biggest nuclear arsenal, after the United States and Russia. Ukraine also obtained the best supersonic strategic bombers in the world like Tupolev 160. However, our partners from the West and Russia afraid of the nukes which Ukraine obtained, and they pushed Ukraine for some sort of the Budapest Memorandum, under which Ukraine transferred all of the nukes to the Russian Federation and cut all of its bombers. Some of the bombers got just few flying hours, they were brand new. Mostly this program was sponsored by the United States of America. According to the Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine got security guarantees from three of the countries, the United States of America, Russia and the United Kingdom. The memorandum was signed at the highest level. It was signed 30 years ago in 1994. And what we see currently after those 30 years, that memorandums or agreements, they do not work. Even the country which was participant of the memorandum actually violated the sovereign integrity of the other country. Yes, this is Kravchuk, the first Ukrainian president. So we understand now that the only security guarantee, especially with its neighbor as Russia, which is a nuclear country, is a membership in this military union in NATO, or obtaining the nuclear weaponry to protect yourself against the intervention. Zelensky said many times about that stuff, and he recently also said that we are following the NATO step. We don't need really nukes, we want the NATO membership. But I guess, you know guys, after all, Ukraine gave up all of the nukes, so it has the right to regain the nuclear weaponry. In that case, then the security of the country and this memorandum are just not working. That's why the membership of Ukraine in NATO is important. We don't need one more nuclear country. There are already many nuclear countries, but the protection of Ukraine is actually crucial. But it seems like our allies are not very fast with that decision, and it might take years and years for Ukraine to enter the alliance. And you know, by the way, Russia transferred their weaponry to Belarus. So there is one more nuclear country which obtained the tactical nukes. Why West is not doing the same with Ukraine? Well, because they're afraid of escalation. If we speak about dictator countries and democracies, dictators do not afraid of escalation that much as our democratic leaders, politicians. So because of that, after all, I think that there are the talks in the Ukrainian government of how to deal with this issue, and they're looking for any kind of the scenarios, including the nuclear one. It doesn't mean that Ukraine is solely oriented on obtaining the nuclear weaponry, but I think that Ukrainian officials are thinking about it. At least this information, I think, was shared to alert our partners that Ukraine gave up the nukes to obtain security guarantees. Security guarantees are not working, so please do something. Yeah, officially Ukraine denies the statement from Bild source, but it denies it not at the high level. Some of the representatives of the president's office said that no, this article is not a truthful one. By the way, Russia also might use this article saying that Ukraine is getting ready to produce the nukes, but they were saying like that even before. You probably remember the dirty bomb accusations that the Russians started to lose the ground in Ukraine, how they lost the Kharkiv region and Kherson. Shoigu said that the dirty bomb is ready, they're ready to strike with it the Russian territory, but nothing happened. Guys, if you like the job that I do on YouTube, you may also support me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for your kind support and motivation. Also, most of the stuff around the Ukraine on the Bild source is shared by Yulian Röpke, a journalist who shared sometimes not the proved information. For example, even before the announcement of Zelensky victory plan, Röpke said that Ukraine is getting ready to negotiate about the ceasefire with the Russian forces at some certain direction. Or before then he said that Ukraine lost RST systems. I guess that Ukraine lost some of them, but in that particular case it was a wrong information, so Röpke had to dismiss his words himself. It seems like the guy is always looking for a sensation, and he's sharing sometimes not the proved information, also from the Russian sources. Well, for the blogger, YouTuber like me it's fine, but for the journalist, I don't think so. But the information about the nukes Zelensky is using in achieving his goals. We need NATO or nukes and we want NATO. So Ukraine declares that it doesn't need the nuclear weaponry, but at the same time Zelensky admits that it was a mistake to give up nuclear weaponry. The Ukrainian president said about it in Brussels. But what's about the production of the nuclear weaponry in a matter of weeks? Well, I think that it's not realistic. By the way, kind of a strange map here, I took it from internet. We should put Ukraine into the same color. So Crimea is Ukraine for sure. So I'm sure that our partners from the United States of America and also Russian Federation inspected all of the nuclear facilities of Ukraine, and there is no nuclear weaponry left from the Soviet Union on the territory of Ukraine. It means that to produce the nukes you need lots of the resources. Like for example, if we take Iran, it's trying to develop the nuclear weaponry for a very long time. Under the sanctions, as you see, it's kind of hard. Well, if Ukraine starts to produce nukes, it will also get under the sanctions. And there could be the total freeze of any sort of the military and financial support of the country. But definitely producing some sort of the dirty bomb is not a big deal. Especially when you have the nuclear materials and Ukraine has those. That's why Russia emphasized that Ukraine has the capability to produce the dirty bomb, but actually many of the states do have this capability. If you have the nuclear power plants, you have the nuclear waste which could be used for this purpose. But speaking about the real nuclear weapon, like for example now North Korea has, no, it's unachievable goal for Ukraine. Not in a matter of weeks, but in a matter of years. And in this case, the NATO membership looks more bright, I would say. Alright, according to the latest information, President Joe Biden has arrived to Germany for some sort of the negotiations between Germany, France and the United Kingdom. It is not yet the Ramstein meeting which is planned for the next month, but this meeting is also very important. Yesterday, Zelensky went to Brussels to the head office of NATO, where they discussed the possible Ukrainian future in NATO. Well, Ukraine will be in NATO, but when, no one knows. So Zelensky presented his victory plan to our allies elsewhere, and some of them are really horrified about this plan. So Zelensky doesn't see any sort of the solutions for Ukraine rather than the NATO membership. So the NATO invitation for Kiev is the only way to stop Russia's war, says Zelensky. He told it to Financial Times during his visit in Brussels. Like for example, this guy, Viktor Orban, who said that he is definitely horrified. It's the quote, and he is looking for direct negotiations between Russia and the European Union about what? Also, he said that instead of Hungary, the Ukrainian territory was always questionable. It is definitely Putin's rhetoric, so Orban works for Russia and for China simultaneously. At the same time, the German Chancellor Scholz said that he will not change his decision about the military support of Ukraine. I guess he meant that he will not support Ukraine with towers, cruise missiles, or something else. Well, he said before the similar stuff about the Leopard 2 tanks, so who knows what might happen in the future. Never trust politicians. Their opinion may change in a matter of seconds if it is more profitable for them. Alright, now let's go to the military map. For a while, Ukraine started its ground assault operation against the Russian forces in Nevsky village. This is the place where Russia recently got some turning ground and they occupied a part of Nevsky. Azov soldiers took part in this operation, and yet we don't have the information whether it's successful or not. But the fact is the fact. Ukraine tries to counterattack using limited forces in some different areas of the front lines. But again, Russia keeps its initiative. In Kurachev direction, they advance to the nearby village, taking some Soron ground, and they will expand this bridgehead to later on advance northbound. I'm speaking about this area, so according to the deep state military maps, yes, Russians propelled forward, and also you can see the increasement of this gray zone. It is understandable that Ukraine will leave this area and Russians will attack from the north and from the south, trying to encircle the Ukrainian group. Not far away in Turkana, Russians also propelled forward, so yesterday and today just a little, but still there is the movement. In Selidova everything is stable for today, there is no movement towards that settlement. In the Pokrovsk direction, Russians are standstill for a couple of days. But according to the recent information, Russians moved towards the Chasiv Yar, so finally they were able to cross this river, which held them for a very long time, for several months, I would say. We may see the major attack vectors towards the Chasiv Yar from 3 of the directions. In the Kursk Oblast, everything is the same. Ukraine holds against the Russian strikes. The last night, Russia launched lots of the drones to strike the Kiev Oblast, mostly Giran drones, 80 of those were shot down by Ukrainian air defense. For now, it's the record number of the drones which were launched in the same direction towards Kiev. The ex-General Commander Zaluzhny gave the short interview about the perspectives of the war in Ukraine. He said that he also doesn't see how this war could end in a short-term perspective without the robust security guarantees for Ukraine, so it will continue. He also mentioned that Ukraine haven't got enough weaponry for the summer counteroffensive the last year, so in that case there is a reasonable question: why did Ukraine start this offensive or counteroffensive? By the way, General Zaluzhny was a commander by the time, so it's his responsibility as well. And as we know, that counteroffensive failed. Ukraine was able to deoccupy some of the territories, but wasn't able to break through the Russian defense. At the same time, there were heavy losses in the Ukrainian army, and I would say it's some sort of the breakthrough in morale for Ukrainians and for Ukrainian army. I mean, the counteroffensive was so advertised and people were so sure that it would be successful that later on people were just disappointed about the result, but the harsh reality that fighting against this prevailing enemy as Russia is really hard, and sometimes, yes, unfortunately, Ukraine does some of the mistakes. Some of my followers on Telegram asked me to comment of what is happening in one of the churches of Cherkasy. Well, there is basically a conflict of two of the Ukrainian Orthodox churches. One is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church with the Moscow Patriarchy, and the other one is just a Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Well, from the experience of the war, we see that the priests from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which belongs to the Moscow's Patriarchy, collaborated many of the times with the Russian occupiers. Some of those priests were even persecuted after Russians retreated from the Kiev Oblast, Chernigiv, Sumy, because basically they helped the Russian army by that time, and later on they were exchanged for Ukrainian soldiers. So really, I don't like this Moscow's Patriarchy. That's why my comment will be obviously biased on what is happening in Cherkasy Temple, for example. But at the same time, I do not believe in what Ukrainian media said about the case, and they say that people of the Moscow's Patriarchy stormed the building, but on the video I may clearly say that no, the people in uniform wearing the yellow stripes are storming the building. Unfortunately, guys, I cannot show you this video on YouTube. Probably you know my attitude towards religion. I believe in the highest force of aerodynamic. The lift force and the drag are heaven and hell for me. So not being too religious, it's hard for me to comment those religious moments, but the conflict is not really good. But as I say to you, I don't really support what is connected to Moscow, and the Moscow's Patriarchy sounds not that great. Trump again says the similar stuff about Zelensky, but a little different this time.
I think Zelensky's one of the greatest salesmen I've ever seen. Every time he comes in, we give him $100 billion. Who else got that kind of money in history? There's never been. And that doesn't mean I don't want to help him, because I feel very badly for those people. But he should never have let that war start. That war's a loser.
Trump said that he should never start this war, saying about probably Zelensky or probably not, because right before the sentence he spoke about Joe Biden. So I think it was a mistake from Donald Trump saying he in this context. He meant Joe Biden. So he accused Joe Biden for starting this war in Ukraine. Really that and that nonsense, but Donald Trump continued to speak like that. Plus he continued to tell that Zelensky is a salesman who goes from the United States with $100 billion every time. Sometimes Trump says 60 billion, this time he raises the stakes. Well, again, it has nothing to do with reality, and I'm sure that if Donald Trump gets elected, Ukraine will be in lack of the military support from the United States, and probably not only. Guys, I still wonder how this politician is still popular in the United States, that half of the population is willing to vote for him. Some Trump supporters say that Trump will win and I will suffer, but guys, I do not live for now in the United States of America, so who would suffer in that case? Alright, we have some of the good news and the bad news about F-16s. The good news is that Norway will send 6 of the airplanes very soon to Ukraine. We have the confirmation about it from the Norway Defense Ministry. The bad news that allies are now concentrated on the cadet pilot training for the Ukrainian Air Force to be type rated on F-16s. It means that there will be no conversion course for the Ukrainian experienced pilots, and United States, for example, will train youngsters, like people without flying experience, and they will go through all of the steps, and it will take years. They'll start from the piston engine aircraft, later on they will go for some sort of the jet training aircraft, and only after that to F-16. and each of those steps takes lots of the time. I wonder why our allies concluded that decision. Well, probably it's easier to train a young pilot without any Soviet airplane experience, and it will be a better pilot compared to the pilot who got experience on the Soviet airplanes and who doesn't know maybe English well. I understand that there is the problem of Ukrainian older generation pilots. By the time English wasn't so necessary for them, but all of the manuals and everything for those airplanes is in English. But the younger people in Ukraine usually know English better, they are willing to train, to study, so maybe that's why Ukraine could obtain better prepared personnel for the fighter jets, but again it takes lots of the time. Honestly, guys, I would like to take the part in training being some sort of the ground instructor because I know the systems, I know English, the aircraft construction, the names of the parts is basically the same as for civilian aircraft and as for military, I mean in English. So I could be some sort of the translator guide for our pilots, but in this case I also need to be trained on F-16 to obtain the type rating, and again it takes lots of the time. So it sounds good, but again not realistic. And I guess they already have those kind of the people, the program is working for a long time already. The Ukrainian military intelligence chief Davydov said that North Korea is getting ready to transfer lots of the troops to Ukraine. To fight on the Russian side, he spoke about 11,000 troops, which could be ready as soon as November, and some of them are located in the Russian training camps. However, we don't have any kind of the proofs of that information. It is coming from intelligence services. However, the real evidence of that is absent. Probably we'll see it after North Korea will send those troops to Ukraine. But again, it could be a false flag operation of the Russian Federation in cooperation of North Korea, because those soldiers could be marked as the Russian ones. So only after they are captured by Ukrainian soldiers will see the real evidence. And to some of the international news, Yahya Sinwar confirmed KIA by IDF. His body was found in a Gaza Strip, 100% it is him, it was confirmed by many of the sources. This operation was conducted by Israeli forces in cooperation, probably with American intelligence. Well, at least many of the sources say that USA provided the data about the location of the guy. Yeah, Israel is really successful in zeroing the leaders of the enemy groups, like Hezbollah or, in this case, Hamas. And now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as always, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.